Well, hi, everyone. Thanks for the opportunity. My name is Sarah Kleinman. I'm the Director of 4-H Family and Farm Worker Education Programs within Extension, and Lauren, of course, is our Teen and Leadership Program Coordinator, and so we'll be sharing in this presentation. A lot of people know what 4-H is. Sometimes you know what we do, but I think what is often missing is the intentional approach and the research that informs how we do what we do. So that's where we're trying to focus a lot of the presentation on today. To get you all caught up to speed, in case you're unaware, 4-H got its start almost 120 years ago in Ohio with corn and tomato clubs. And the reason that that happened is because researchers learned that young people were more open to advances and technological change. And it would be easier to bring that along if you reached out to the youth, where parents were often resistant. So by teaching our young people, they would then inform and influence their parents to adapt that technology. And that is really how 4-H developed. Over time, of course, our agrarian society evolved and changed. And so 4-H changed along with it. But we've always kept youth front and center. Now, today, 4-H is considered the largest youth serving organization in the country. We reach over 6 million youth, and we're really very much steeped in the science of learning and development, which informs a positive youth development approach and a framework. So we recognize, 4-H recognizes that positive youth development approach where youth have interests, abilities, and strengths that can be enhanced by participation in 4-H programs. We are also trying to position ourselves, especially here in Vermont, to support 3 main themes that have emerged through research, national research, especially over the course of the pandemic that was recently addressed in an opportunity gap, a report about opportunity gaps, to really ensure a more equitable distribution of resources and experiences. The 3 themes that arose out of that particular report include ways that we could support mental health, especially through relationships and intentional strategies, supporting educational opportunities, especially as it relates to access and equity, and then supporting experiences that ultimately lead to employability skills and competencies, those that might help to raise economic indicators. And so those 3 themes, along with all of the intentional approaches and the research that informs the thriving model, which we'll talk about, helps to inform how and where and the ways that we deliver our programs. Let me move to the next slide. So the 4-H thriving model includes a number of different ingredients that really help us go into what we consider a positive youth development experience. So there's these key ingredients, and then that informs the thriving model, which we'll get into, and I'll show you that particular model in a few other areas. First, one of the key ingredients is belonging, how we set up relationships, safe environments, and more. Mastery that builds self-confidence and learning to make sure that somebody really fully understands a subject matter, and then that ultimately leads to self-efficacy. Independence is a 4th key ingredient, which allows for opportunity of voice and choice and really engaging youth as partners and having them make some of the decisions for themselves. Of course, that evolves as the youth gets older. And then generosity, helping youth figure out that service to others is a key ingredient that also builds resilience and helps move you along. So we take those 4 ingredients and then package that into a program where we deliver content. And that content could be animals, it might be robotics, it might be gardening or leadership, but that content is ultimately the vehicle that we use to move youth along and to help build life skills and to help youth find their spark. And we're going to talk a lot about sparks as we go through this presentation. So a spark is really a passion, right? It's that fire, if you will, or a passion for some sort of interest or skill, and something that helps bring energy and life to a young person's involvement and moves them purposeful and in a direction. We treat youth as partners. They need to be invested in their own learning and use an inquiry-based approach. And we really need to be responsive to them. Each individual youth is different, right? What motivates somebody, the ACEs or trauma or just life experiences somebody has, it's unique to each individual person. So the pathway that somebody might encounter a very short-term program or a longer trajectory through an opportunity is going to be different for everybody. So we try to be as responsive as we can to each individual person. We do our best to keep youth as engaged as possible, not just in attendance. So it's great if somebody comes to our programs, but how they interact with that program is really critical. You don't just sit there and through osmosis, really move along this thriving trajectory, but we want people to be, young people to be actively engaged and for optimum outcomes. We also know Rich Lerner is a key partner of ours. He's a researcher out of Tufts University. Many years ago, he conducted the first longitudinal study on positive youth development and looking at 4-H as well as youth and other youth serving organizations. And we know that the longer we can keep youth involved in our programs, the better off they're going to be. You see on the screen right now that little graphic in the lower corner. So if we know that 4-Hers are more likely to give back to their communities, they're more likely to make healthier choices, and they're more likely to engage in STEM activities as compared to youth and other youth serving organizations. Mary Arnold, who comes from Oregon State, and her team of researchers, along with other researchers that come from the Search Institute and that have been steeped in the body of positive youth development, have done a lot of work over the past couple of years, really, to take all these different models, merge them together, test them against the 4-H environment, and ultimately have discovered this framework that we've been using for the past few years called the Thriving Model of Positive Youth Development. We know that the context, so if you look at the developmental context, that little circle, there's a couple different ingredients, and that combination of things is really critical. The sparks that we talked about don't happen by themselves, but they're really intentional programming models. Relationships and belonging, that sense of belonging, knowing that somebody feels safe in our programs, and that the people, the adults that are helping to facilitate these opportunities, that relationship with them is really incredibly critical to build that youth spark and to help youth move along that the thriving trajectory. The sparks enhance a young person's networks. So those relationships with the facilitators, whether they are on-campus experiences and we're connecting our young people to faculty, or we're connecting them to volunteers in the field, that relationship really helps somebody build the social network that's needed and moves somebody along a learning trajectory and builds the opportunities for engagement. We also know that sparks can be a protective factor for young people that helps to keep them out of the trouble as the young person's intense interest and spark really builds and gains momentum. So these sparks motivate youth to succeed in other areas of their lives, such as personal, social, and academic. And the last thing that I really want to talk about is the role of healthy developmental relationships that shift power over time. Healthy developmental relationships is probably one of the most critical ingredients to everything that we do. And because we work with youth from 5 to 18, of course, as you work with younger aged youth, usually those experiences are more highly adult driven and determined. But as an individual grows, our developmental relationship with our participants grows. And we really look at that young person as competent and provide the personal autonomy and decision-making and identity formation and all those opportunities as best we can. So as that youth grows, an effective 4-H program grows right alongside them to be as developmentally appropriate as possible. Our research has revealed 5 different dimensions of developmental relationships. The first is expressing care through listening, being warmth, dependability, but then we also need to challenge growth by holding youth accountable and expecting them to do their best and helping them reflect on failures. We, as you all know, we run horse shows, right? And I'm constantly telling people that we don't teach riding in 4-H. We don't have to have these horse shows. But the purpose of those horse shows is for the youth to be able to graciously lose, right? And to build their self-esteem by getting up in front of other people, and also understand and build that resilience by the disappointment that they may face if they didn't perform well. So the opportunities in these competitions that we have are really primarily there to help build these skills. We also provide support by empowering and advocating for youth, as well as helping them navigate situations and systems and helping to set developmentally appropriate boundaries. We expand possibilities by exposing those youth to new ideas and opportunities and connecting them to other people, to you, to each other, to help them reach their goals. And as I mentioned before, we also know that each person and what they need is different. So the practitioner, the program facilitator, the volunteer, that caring adult really needs to spend time getting to know each individual youth and what they need and what makes them tick. We need them to know that their voice is valued. And so by taking the time to sit alongside them and asking them questions helps that young person understand and acknowledge that people care about them and that they're important. And that alone will help them move along this thriving trajectory. Our club model of delivery, part of the reason it's so important is because a lot of time is really spent building those developmental relationships, but we're still able to do that with many of our short-term and other programs. And so I'm going to turn this over to Lauren now to talk a little bit more about those programs and how we do this.
Thank you, Sarah. If you can, advance. I clicked my button, I'm like, how did it move? Sorry, technology. So Sarah did a great job talking about, all of the theory and models that 4-H is based in. We are not just a program that works with youth. We're a program that's worked with youth that is based on really good research and evidence-based theories that help us be very intentional in the work that we do. And so what does that look like when you hit the ground here in Vermont? I'm going to talk about the perspective from my programs that I run. I work with the teen population. I focus on teen and leadership programming. And so as Sarah talked about, when you reach the middle school and high school years, you really are sort of starting with the sparks. They're beginning developmentally to want to explore different things, start to have ideas of what their future might look like. And so you want to give them those opportunities to explore. A lot of, what we're doing, as Sarah mentioned, is bringing in these opportunities to begin a pathway towards their future. We want them in 4-H to develop the skills that they're going to need to successfully transition from youth into adulthood. And what does that mean? Develop those important life skills, build relationships, gain career and employability skills that sets them on a path. And so, Sarah, if you can advance. We focus a lot in the teen and leadership programs. I try to build leadership into everything because the leadership skills are, again, life skills that really match up well with what employers are looking for. So a lot of the programs that have been developed really kind of match what we know young people are looking for related to the sparks. It's what we know employers are looking for. It's what we know are necessary ingredients to that success in life. And so I just kind of want to give you, share some stories of what this might look like. When we talk about a pathway, we don't necessarily want the one and done, which, some kids will come in, try something in 4-H and be like, that wasn't for me. The longer we have a young person connect to our programs, the better the outcomes, as Sarah had mentioned, the research shows. And so we try to intentionally build pathways so that they can try out different things that will link together. An example might be the teen science cafes. There's a leadership team that plans those cafes pre-pandemic time, and hopefully will come back. Then you have a young person come to a teen science cafe. They might be sparked by the presenter on whatever that science topic was. And then they go off and maybe it has an environmental theme. So then they learn that through the 4-H program, we have a program called the Natural Resource Management Academy. So they sign up for that. But before they get to that, they realize we have a leadership weekend and they recognize like, oh, that might be some really good skills for me to get. So you have this pathway from trying a teen science cafe to then coming to a leadership weekend to then coming to the Natural Resource Management Academy, where the next year you then decide to become a tri-teen teacher, which takes that interest you have in the environment and now you're applying and practicing some employability skills by teaching younger youth about environmental topics. So we have different pathways within 4-H to give our young people a myriad of experiences that build upon each other, that build upon the skills. And all the while, all of these programs are intentionally designed to be wrapped within that developmental context that has those developmental relationships with the adults, that has other young people in the program sharing similar interests. So you're having that sense of belonging. All of that positive youth development comes within these programs as we move them. And ultimately, we see through that thriving model, the outcome is we have young people who reach back out to us years later who say, and actually we have an intern with 4-H right now who reached out and said, I was a tri-teen teacher and that was the most pivotal experience of my high school experience. And now I'm a UVM senior in human development and looking, and came back to 4-H as a place to potentially do a service learning program through her work, which she's doing. And so we regularly get emails like that that said, you know, that experience set me on a path. That particular person was a wonderful connection. I remember at the Natural Resource Management Academy one year, we had a presenter, and I had a young person there who literally mind got blown because she said, oh my God, this is exactly what I want to do, but I didn't know it existed. And basically it was a field naturalist program. And so that presenter was able to then talk with that young person, say, these are the 2 or 3 colleges that have a field naturalist program. And that young person could go home, start exploring, and now understands that what she identified as sort of her life passion was an actual thing she could go and pursue, and now had the connections to begin investigating that pathway. Sarah, if you want to advance. So again, you know, we talk about, we do a lot of career exploration, and it almost doesn't even matter the age level, because even as young as the K through 6, even in their club work, whether they're working with a horse or a cow, or if they're doing shooting sports, or if they're doing robotics, all of that inevitably has career exploration in it. So we start very early. You know, we don't begin to label it very, you know, as intentionally until we get to the middle school and teen years, and really begin identifying those pathways. In the Natural Resource Management Academy, we bring in different natural resource professionals every summer and change them up so that the youth that participate in that program understands the variety of paths that they could take if they're interested in natural resource management. Same with the science cafes. We try to showcase as broad a range of science careers, science research, science fields, so that the young person who might have a very narrow experience understands, and we open up that world. Same within, you know, the various livestock programs, gardening programs, health and nutrition programs. All of the things we try to do is showcase so many different pathways our young people can take. Move on to, this will be the last slide. And so ultimately, whether we're talking about life skills, transferable skills, ultimately these are workforce skills. And we try to help our young people really identify through their time with 4-H, through self-reflection. All of the programs that I run with our middle school and high school teens, they always reflect at the end of a program with one of the questions, having them look at our 4-H life skill wheel and have them identify what skills that they improved. And that is so that when they go out into the world, they have a language that they can put to their experiences and match it to an actual event. They can say, I went to the Natural Resource Management Academy where I gained some really good problem solving skills because I had to figure out how to, you know, get my canoe back to shore when I lost my paddle, whatever it might be. But we really try to help our young people gain the language after they've gained the skills, so that when they are out in the world, they are able to talk very confidently about the skills that they possess. So hopefully when they're in front of employers, they can wow everybody, because we know our 4-Hers are great. And at that, I will leave it. I don't know, Sarah, if you want to add anything else.
Nope. That's what we were intending on sharing is our programming today and also the research that informs how we do what we do. So thank you.
Thanks so much, Sarah and Lauren, as a 4-H'er 40 years ago and becoming more involved now as a parent and community member here in Bennington. It's I've certainly seen some differences, but a lot of commonality too. Good stuff hangs on. And it's nice to see things be researched, informed by research. Thank you.